Good evening, and welcome to the League of Women Voters of Hingham's annual Candidates Night. My name is Kate Boland, and on behalf of the League, I would like to thank the voters for attending this educational evening. I also want to thank the candidates who are participating this evening. We appreciate you taking time to help voters make informed decisions on Election Day on May 2nd. And finally, I want to thank Chris Wilk, who organizes this event each year. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. Because of our nonpartisan position, we must adhere to certain guidelines when hosting our candidates forum. Number one, in contested races, we are not allowed to ask questions of a candidate if their opponent is not present. Our moderator may not be a member of our league or even a Hingham resident. We do not allow any type of outside recording or videos that may be edited and not represent what truly happened in our proceedings. This evening, you can watch the recording in its entirety on the League's website, along with the recording of the 2015 warrant review, so that you're informed for annual town meeting. We addressed as many questions as time allows, and we reframe them if we find them attacking in nature or appear biased. If you have any questions, please pass them forward to Chris Wilk, who is right there, so we can make them available to our moderator. And we ask that you please silence your cell phones as a courtesy. I would like to thank our moderator before, because she usually ends it, but I'd like to introduce you to the moderator, Elizabeth Foster Nolan.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Foster Nolan. I live in Weymouth. For full disclosure, I grew up in Hingham, born and raised here, true Hinghamite, but I have moved. So I just like to make that a full disclosure so that some people do know me from Hingham. I do not live here and I cannot vote. So I would like to thank you for joining us this evening. And we will have a candidates night, which will be under the rules of the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts. This evening we do have two contested races, one for selectmen and one for school committee. And those will happen after we hear from the candidates who are running uncontested. Each candidate who is running uncontested will have 2 minutes to give a statement. And then after we have this panel, the next panel of uncontested slots will come up. Couple of things for people in the audience to understand, and those candidates who will be coming up here for to speak, and especially for the contested races. We have the timekeepers sitting in the front row. They will be very attentive to you, and they have moniker cards that will say, give you a notice of your time. The red card, it's the stop card. If you're in the middle of a sentence, I will not stop you, but I will ask you to stop yourself. I will say thank you, and we will move on. Please note, we do have cameras in the back of the room. We are being taped this evening, but I understand we are actually also live, so just keep that in mind. A reminder, cell phones, iPads, anything that might make a sound. I know there are no longer beepers, but texts, etc., turn them off now, or you will get pointed out in the middle and asked to turn it off. And we ask that you treat all candidates fairly. We ask that you not applaud after each candidate speaks. You can wait till the end of the contested races until everyone has spoken and then applaud, and wait till each of the panels of the uncontested races. And after all of that, we will thank them and they will move on. As they said previously, I don't believe we have all of our cell phones off, so if we can just take care of that right now. Christine will take questions, but we do have several questions here. If they were repetitive, they have been combined. So we will get to as many as we can given time allotments. And so now we will actually start with our uncontested races. And it is a rule that we cannot ask questions to these individuals, but they can make 2-minute opening statements. And we will start with Mr. Michael Puzo, who is running for moderator. It is a 1-year term. He is a candidate for re-election.
Thank you. Thanks, of course, to the League for sponsoring this forum. First, allow me to speak to the role of town moderator. Most visibly, of course, the moderator presides at town meeting. I'm obliged to know the rules, apply them fairly. It's an apolitical position. The moderator needs to ensure that the meeting runs well, that debate is civil and thorough, and that votes are recorded accurately. A less apparent responsibility of the moderator is to appoint citizens of the town to various boards and committees, advisory, personnel, capital outlay, audit, CPC among them. I'm dedicated to fulfilling that responsibility to the best of my ability, but I can't do it without you. So I invite all here present and those who may be watching these proceedings, if you've not done so already, please step up, volunteer, get involved. This town runs on volunteerism. It runs on a tradition of people stepping up and offering service to the town. The work is interesting, it's enjoyable, and it's essential. This work is a critical component of self-governance and what makes Hingham, Hingham. In closing, I ask for your vote on May 2, and I urge you to take part in this year's annual town meeting. We will begin Monday night, April 27th at the high school. Please be sure to check in by 6:30 so that we can start promptly at 7. Open town meeting, where all voters can assemble in a climate of civil discourse and debate issues of importance to the town, with voice and vote. It is at the core of Hingham's character. As the League reminds us, democracy is not a spectator sport. Please, get in the game, and thanks.
Thank you. Our next uncontested candidate is Eileen Mccracken, who is running for town clerk for a 3-year term.
Yes. Good evening. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for holding this event. I'm Eileen Mccracken. I'm running for town clerk, a position I've held for the last 18 years. I'm the 23rd town clerk and the second woman. I was looking at the information on the website about the town clerk, so I thought I'd see how I'm doing. It says, a town clerk must be dedicated to the community. Check. Informative, patient, cheerful, and compassionate. Check. Possesses the ability to listen and advise. I do a lot of listening. Double check. Be receptive to new ideas. Check. And able to maintain a sense of humor while performing duties in a professional manner. I think that's a check. I think I'm doing a pretty good job, but I don't do it alone. I'm lucky enough to have my assistant Liz McVarish and clerk Tanya Layden, who are also checked in all of those categories. A town clerk is generally considered the center of the town. This office conveys a lasting impression on the community to all who enter. I hope I have made a lasting impression and ask for your vote on May 2nd. The polls are open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. We have absentee ballots available now during regular business hours and until noon on May 1st. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next uncontested candidate is Mr. Robert M. Higgins. He is running for Sewer Commission for a 3-year term.
Good evening, and thank you for the invitation to come here and speak. I was appointed back in September of 2014, and I'm married to my wife Margie for 46 years. We live here in town. We have a daughter that's here in town with her 5 children, and my son-in-law and a son that lives in Plymouth, his wife Joy. I have 30 years experience in the private utility sector as a water superintendent. I have a lot of duties. I had a lot of duties. I was responsible for construction and maintenance and operation of the system and the safety of the employees. I was also the company risk manager for a number of years until they finally got sick of me. I've enjoyed my time, and like Eileen, it has been my pleasure since I started here, on the Sewer Commission, to interact with a number of employees in different departments throughout the town. Please know that we have some great employees. They're willing to help you. They'll do anything for you, and they'll do it with a smile. And I didn't realize it until I get onto the sewer commission, just how lucky we really are in this town. So thank you, and I hope you'll give me a vote, even though I'm running unopposed. Thank you.
And next, we will have Mr. William C. Ramsey, who is a candidate for re-election for the Planning Board for a 5-year term.
I want to begin by thanking the league for hosting this event tonight. And I also want to say, I said this on Sunday, but Bob was my Little League coach growing up. Unfortunately, many hours of batting practice for a lost cause on me, but he was great to do it. I want to start off by saying I've lived in town my entire life. I've been involved with town government really since I was a senior in college. People around town knew me as Bill, Billy. Some people call me by my last name. But since my wife has decided to run for office, you're going to hear from her next, I'm simply known as Adrian's husband. But I'm running for re-election to the planning board because I absolutely love the land use development process. I've been involved with town planning issues for about 12 years now. I was on the planning board the last 5 years. I've served as the chairman of the board, also as the clerk. Prior to that time, I served as an alternate to the planning board. I was an alternate on the zoning board of appeals. I also was on the zoning permit study committee. When I was on the study committee, I helped in assisting writing enforcement language that's currently still in our bylaw. This year, put a lot of work into the bylaw that addresses the special permit A3 criteria. Worked with our town planner on that issue, many hours. Looking forward to that at town meeting as well. Just looking forward to continuing my work on the board. We have a lot of issues going on in town right now. We have several bylaws that came before the board that were tabled until next town meeting. So within the year, we're going to be looking at issues that address uniformity, accessory dwelling units, and non-conforming structures. So I would appreciate your vote at the town election. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. We'll now move on to our next group. And Christine will set up your placard so you know where to sit. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We will start with Kenneth F Johnson Jr., who is running for Sewer Commission, but for a 2-year term.
Correct. Good evening, and thank you to the League for the opportunity to be here this evening. My name is Ken Johnson. I've been a resident of Hingham for 27 years. My wife and I have raised 2 children that attended Hingham Public Schools, so kudos to all the hard work that the school committee does. We appreciate all that. They've gone on to do great things. A little bit about my professional background. I'm a registered professional civil engineer. Back in the early 1990s, I was part of a team that built the Mass Water Resource Authority's wastewater treatment plant out on Deer Island, where after we collect our wastewater here in Hingham, a good portion of it ends up out there. So I'm very familiar with the operations of those systems. I've gone on after that to manage the Logan Modernization Program over at the Massachusetts Port Authority, where I was also responsible for doing 5-year capital planning, prioritizing projects, forecasting spending, and then managing to that budget. I spent a little bit of time over at Harvard University in their major campus expansion program in Alston, where I did a lot of utility master planning and planning for that infrastructure. For the Sewer Commission, I see primarily 2 big responsibilities. First is the operation and maintenance of the existing system. So, we're very fortunate to have a municipal collection system here in town for a number of the residents, and with that goes along the responsibility of good stewardship of that system and making sure that it is maintained and operated in a very efficient manner to make sure that the rates are held as low and as consistent as possible from year to year. And the second responsibility, I think, there's been a comprehensive wastewater master plan committee that's been involved over the years here at Hingham, and they've outlaid sort of a strategy and a master plan. So I think thoughtful implementation of that master plan is sort of the second responsibility as that sort of comes to be. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to Adrian Ramsey, who is running for a position on Recreation Commission for a 5-year term.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Adrian Ramsey, and like the other candidates, I'd like to express my thanks to the League for hosting this event and also to all of you for coming tonight. I realize you're taking time out of your busy schedules, and that is very well appreciated. As you know, I am running for the seat for Recreation Commissioner. This past summer, I was privileged to join the board when there was an open seat and I was appointed by the selectmen. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time serving on the board and look forward to doing so in the future as well. For the past probably 10 years, I've been involved in some capacity with the Recreation Department. I began working there in 2002, serving in various capacities. However, I'm most proud of the fact that I'm one of the founding members of the spitting program. So if any of you have done a little spitting at the rec, I was very proud to say that I am one of the original instructors, and I still maintain friendships with the colleagues I had there, as well as the students that I instructed during that time. However, my priorities have shifted. I'm the mother of 3 small children, 4, almost 3, and 1. I hope you feel a little bit bad for me out there. But our family feels feel very important that the Recreation Department is a vital part of our town. The Recreational Department provides access to our citizens, to the gym, to the field, to the waterfront, and we look forward to continuing to provide that access at affordable prices for all of our citizens. Thank you again for your time, and I would appreciate your vote on May 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you. Each of the candidates who was unable to attend in all of the uncontested races was provided with the opportunity to send in a statement to the League to be read this evening. So prior to going on to Mr. Freeman, I'd like to read 2 statements that the League did receive from 2 people who were unable to attend. The first statement is from John Stoddard, who is a candidate for the Municipal Light Board, and this is his statement. I apologize for not being able to attend tonight. I planned a family vacation months ago. Otherwise, I'd be joining you for this important evening. My name is John Stoddard, and I'm running for re-election to the Hingham Municipal Light Board. Since 2000, I have enjoyed the challenges associated with helping guide a municipal light plant in this quickly changing energy world. I am a native son of Hingham. I grew up here, have raised my family here, and Hingham is where I make my living as a small business owner. My company's name is Stoddard Electric. Prior to starting my business, I worked at the plant as a lineman for 6 years. Being a business owner and former employee gives me insight to a key component of what makes Hingham Municipal Light Plant so successful: its employees. I find both the field and administrative folks always have had the best interests of Hingham residents at heart in performing their duties. I see the priorities for the light plant being the same they've been for years. Keep the lights on, and if they go out, get them back on quickly. Keep prices down. Our residential rate is unchanged since 2007, while NSTARS and National Grids have seen prices jump by more than 30%. Make responsible choices for whom we buy our power. We do not chase the absolute cheapest kilowatt, rather we balance the need for lower-priced energy with reducing our carbon footprint. Investor-owned utilities are mandated to have 15% of their energy portfolio coming from renewables by 2020. Hingham Municipal Light Plant is not bound by the same statutory requirement, yet we are incorporated renewables to approximately 12% of our sources. Our HMLP is Going Green program nearly mirrors the programs of investor-owned utilities and is self-funded rather than a burden on our customers. HMLP embraces the need to devise policies that support the growing demand by our customers to use renewables without creating subsidies for those who have them at the expense of the customers who don't. HLMP has contracted with a rate-setting firm to help us achieve that balance and expects their recommendations shortly. I appreciate Hingham voters' support and look forward to continuing to serve you going forward. Even I have to keep in with the time. The next statement is from William Wise, who is also not able to be here. He is actually running for the Housing Authority for a 5-year term. William B. Wise is a 30-year resident of Hingham. He and his wife Nancy have raised 2 children, Christian and Whitney, one of whom resides in the town with her husband Simon Lloyd and their 4 small children who attend St. Paul and the Foster schools. Bill has a history of participating in many town activities, including youth sports, with his children as coach of softball and basketball teams, and as a member of St. Paul's Parish Council and religious education teacher for 4th grade CCD. Bill is in the 3rd year of service as an advisory committee member and once served on the town's personnel board for a brief period. The opportunity to continue to serve Hingham and its residents presented itself with an open position on the Hingham Housing Authority that was not attracting any candidates. Rather than let an office be vacant, Bill obtained the required signatures within 2 days of the close of candidate registration. His experience with affordable housing and HUD-related laws and regulations originated with his support of friends who are the tenants of the Lincoln Street Apartments in their efforts to replace a faulty elevator which created an unsafe condition. While the Lincoln Street Apartments are not part of the Hingham Housing Authority, the legal issues and the goal of affordable housing for seniors, veterans, and the handicapped are Housing Authority concerns. Bill is an attorney with a business practice and works in Boston. Bill will follow the example of Stephanie McHugh, whose dedicated service as a member and chair of the Hingham Housing Authority expires this April. I convey my appreciation to the League of Women Voters for permitting me to prepare this statement. I regret I am not able to address your forum this evening. Thank you. Bill Wise, 10 Popes Lane. So we will now move on to Mr. Roger Freeman, who is running in a contested race. However, his opponent, Mr. David Ellison, was unable to attend this evening, and under League of Women Voter rules, we are not allowed to have a debate with only one of the candidates present. So Mr. Freeman, who is running for a 1-year term, you have 2 minutes to give a statement.
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting the event. Thank you for the other candidates for coming and participating, and thank you to everyone in the audience for coming to hear. My name is Roger Freeman. I'm running for the Light Board, and I'm asking for your vote and your support so that I can bring 2 decades of experience in business, energy, and regulation for the energy business and law to bear to help Hingham Light adapt to the challenges of a rapidly evolving 21st century energy markets. I've practiced law for about a decade and been in business for about a decade, so I balance the experience of negotiating contracts and developing businesses for energy efficiency, for wind power development, and my company now, Silva, is a solar power development company. My vision for what I'd like to see Hingham Light do more of is bringing some of the new energy innovations that have brought the price of renewable energy down, enabled lower carbon solutions, and new technologies to make energy efficiency more affordable and available. But I wouldn't want that to distract from the primary mission of Hingham Light, which is to keep service quality high and rates affordable. But I believe more and more we can balance these interests in order to keep rates low while at the same time preparing for the future. So what does that mean specifically? Well, first of all, I'd like to see more energy efficiency programs made available in the town so that people can be smarter about the way they use energy and use less as a result. Secondly, I'd like to see the town ramp up their efforts to procure cost-effective, lower carbon solutions, including renewable energy where available. And finally, I'd like to see Hingham Light be more proactive in adopting policies and rules to enable to take advantage of new energy technologies such as rooftop solar so that they can generate their own electricity and have control over their own energy futures. With the lowering prices and programs and incentives that are out there, I believe this can be done in a way that doesn't compromise service and that doesn't raise the rates for those other members of the community. We have a real great opportunity here in Hingham that we own and control our own utility, and it's controlled by the Light Board, and I'd like your help to help guide it into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We are now going to be moving on to the contested race for selectmen. And as Christine sets the placards, I want to let you know that earlier there was a lottery drawing for how the opening statements, who would begin, and then for the questions. So if we could have the 2 candidates take their seats, we can start for the selectmen's race. And what I want to let you know is what you received earlier is that you have 2 minutes, each of you, for an opening statement. You will have questions that I will address to you. You will have 1 minute to answer each question. There is no rebuttal time. You will then have 2 minutes for a closing statement. Opening statements will begin in the order of the lottery, and that is Ms. Power. And it will be reverse for the closing statements. So is Ms. Lauder? I want to get your name correct. Okay. So we will begin unless you have any questions about the format. Okay. So the first question, opening statements. Sorry, getting ahead of myself.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Mary Power. I live at 1 King Philip Path. I'd like to thank the League for sponsoring this event. I'd like to thank everyone for coming this evening and for viewing this. My background, I have a BA from Manhattan College. I have an MBA in finance from the University of Notre Dame. And for the past 30 years, I have worked in and with Fortune 50 and Fortune 500 companies in financial management and leadership and development. My husband Dan and I moved to Hingham in 2001, shortly before the birth of our first son. We have 2 boys, Connor and Brendan, 8th grade and 6th grade. They're both students at Hingham Middle School. Shortly after Dan and I moved to Hingham, we realized that Hingham's greatness really didn't happen by accident. It's the result of the great volunteerism that we see present tonight. And we felt a strong responsibility to get involved in our community. I got involved by being appointed to the Bear Cove Park Committee, the Zoning Permit Study Committee. I served on the 4th of July Parade Committee, the Friends of Hingham Public Schools. For the past 5 years, I've had the honor of serving on the Advisory Committee. This is my 5th year. I am currently the chair. Over the past 5 years, I've had liaison responsibility for education, public safety, the high school fields, the town financial policy, the debt service budget, and water and sewer issues. I mention this because this experience, I believe, will be very helpful to the Board of Selectmen, as it's going to be making decisions in the next few years that will influence Hingham for decades to come. This, combined with my leadership style, which focuses on collaboration, respect, and driving to consensus, I believe can help Hingham as it moves forward. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, first let me thank the League of Women Voters. I have very much enjoyed working with them over I can't tell you how many years, and appreciate their efforts, especially in the special studies that they do. Tally and I moved to Hingham 2 weeks before the blizzard of '78. So we've been here a little while. We found Hingham in 1970 when we found the harbor in St. John's Church. And I became involved in government in the 90s. Since then, I have a tremendous base of institutional knowledge plus a file system that it's pretty good from all the different committees. I've been on, my first committee was the Cable Advisory Board when it was a technical board. I then worked on government study, the advisory committee, capital outlay, being chair of both. The year I was appointed chair of the advisory committee was very exciting, also coupled with that was the year the bottom fell out of the financial world. So I know the ways of the budgeting in Hingham. I know the budgets. I know backwards and forwards. I'm asking for you to return me for another 3 years so I can continue the work that we've had on all kinds of projects, including senior issues, veterans issues. We have a tremendous number of building projects that are going to be coming in the next 5 years that are going to require a great deal of investment and some smart decisions. My education, my community service, my time on the government committees all stand me in good stead to do another 3 years, and I promise to do everything in my power to maintain that AAA rating and make no decisions that will harm it. So thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on to the question portion of the evening. And again, by lottery, there was who would have the first question. Same questions to both of you, and they will alternate back and forth for each of the questions. So Ms. Lauder, you won the lottery for the first question, to answer the question first, so I will start with you. In your opinion, What are the most important challenges facing our town, and how do you propose to address these changes?
Oh, that was a question this week. There are a number of challenges we're facing right now. Maintaining our tax rate, affordable housing, bringing leadership back to the middle where it belongs in a more collegial manner. The housing and the taxes are probably the most important, followed closely by responsible development. We're going to need new revenues over the next several years to maintain the quality of life and the quality of services. We have to balance the need for revenues with the quality of life in our neighborhoods so that we do not adversely impact them while we chase new revenues.
Thank you. Ms. Power.
I see two very important challenges that we face ahead. The first one has to do with leadership transition and morale at Town Hall. Over the next several months, Hingham will be hiring a new police chief, a new fire chief, a new library director, a new assistant town administrator. These 4 individuals collectively have 120 years of experience with the town, and that's very hard to replace. It's going to be very important for the Board of Selectmen to lead the transition, to help manage it, and set an example for the kind of civil discourse that we expect from everyone in our town. I think my management experience comes into play and will be very helpful to the Board of Selectmen. I think the other issue facing the town is how to continue to provide the services that we all like and enjoy without overburdening our residential taxpayers. I think that is going to be, that what will be needed will be some low-impact commercial development as well as thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Power.
Yes.
What will you do to help average Hingham residents in their quest for affordable housing?
Affordable housing is an interesting question in Hingham because if you look at the average cost in Hingham, and actually my house is about the median property value in Hingham, which right now is a little over $600,000. That's not affordable to a lot of people. It's not affordable to a lot of people who have lived in this town and want to remain in the town. It's not affordable to a lot of people who grew up in this town and maybe want to move back. I think it's going to be very important that as a town body, we look at ways to bring affordable housing that not only helps our seniors and our veterans, but makes housing accessible to everyone. I also think it's going to be important that we manage our operating budgets over the next several years to make sure that once people come to town, that they're able to stay here.
Thank you. Ms. Lauder?
Affordable housing is a very serious issue for many of our market segments and the citizen segments. I divide it into 2 groups, market rate affordable housing and affordable housing as defined by the state. 2 initiatives that I really want to see through, and that was one of the reasons that I decided to run again. I would like to add a wing onto Lincoln School Apartments to get us maybe 20 more units for our seniors so that they can live in the center of town. The other thing I'm very proud of is I was the one that found the unit at Beals Cove that the Housing Trust bought and made affordable. We need to do more of that. I also think we have enough town land that's owned by the town that we could put a small portion and give it to a developer to develop $500,000 patio homes like known in Florida for our seniors so that they don't have to leave town.
Thank you.
You got me.
Ms. Lauder. Please explain why you do or do not believe that the town should increase the commercial tax base, and what steps would you take to attract businesses, investors, and employers to town?
We need to increase our commercial tax base. That will bring in revenues plus bring in services and bring in amenities to the town while not burdening our schools with the need for an additional school. What will I do? I will work with the Chamber of Commerce and all the other business groups to go out and meet and attract businesses to come to town. We'll also work with the South Hingham Study Group and the planning groups that we have to develop South Hingham in a very responsible way. In addition, we have areas where we could repurpose buildings that are already commercial and use them to attract new businesses in the areas so that we can keep our residential tax rate as low as possible.
Ms. Power.
Thank you. I believe we need to increase the tax base with what I would call low-impact commercial development, simply because if you look at our revenue forecast, our costs in this town increase by about 3.5% every year. But in a Proposition 2.5 environment, our revenues can only go up by 2.5. In the past several years, we've had new growth that has allowed us to bridge that gap, and that's slowing down. I think commercial development is going to be important in order for us to continue to enjoy the services that we have. I support the work of the South Hingham Study Group. I would also point to two decisions that town meeting has made in the past few years during my tenure on the advisory committee, which is the establishment of a 43D district and the establishment of that last year in the South Shore Park. What that essentially does is it sends a message to different businesses that we are open for business, and it will facilitate and streamline planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Power. From Hingham Harbor to Bear Cove Park, Hingham is blessed with more than 1,000 acres of open space. What recreation facilities do you support building or open space protection?
I think we need to balance open space protection and recreational building. But if I sat here right now and told you what sort of recreational building we should have, I think I would be short-circuiting a very important part of Hingham, and that's our committee and working group process. I think we have some, as the mother of two sons who participate in Hingham sports, I'm acutely aware of the fact that we still have some issues with having enough recreational space in town. My sixth grader still plays his home games in Cohasset. So I understand that there's work to be done, but I think the better approach to do is utilizing our talent bank process to assemble a committee made up of all kinds of diverse citizens to understand and identify recreational needs. This would also be a group that could look at perhaps balancing the need for preserving and maintaining open space. As a former member of the Bear Cove Park Committee, I appreciate all too well the scarcity and importance of our open space.
Thank you. Ms. Lauder.
We have just initiated a master planning effort for fields, recreation, and sports. The first phases of it we have staffed with wonderful volunteers from all of the sports groups, our recreation department, school department. That will give us pretty much a good blueprint of where to go and what we don't have and what needs to be maintained. As part of this, we're also going to be, what does it cost us? And a maintenance plan. In addition, right now there is an effort that we need to support, and it's the Trails Master Plan that is going to show linking all of our, or as much as you can, all of our open space for trails and recreational opportunities for people, and also the harbor master plan. I know there's so much here. I get excited over this, that there's so much opportunity for recreation, both passive and active in this town. And we do have some groups.
Thank you.
We do have groups.
Ms. Lauder, please cite a public policy decision or issue in which you were engaged in the past that you have reconsidered or have changed your opinion. How has your view changed?
Public policy. I'll take the housing trust. And that was, I will call that a public policy. When that was initiated back in 2007, 2008, I was a bit skeptical about that, and I've come full circle on it. I think that was one of the better decisions we've made, to give and empower a group to go and find and sponsor opportunities for affordable housing, and also to continue to look at existing housing, and then if they can find it, deed it as affordable and put it into the master plan. So that's the one that comes to mind. I'll probably think about 7 of them after this is over. So I'll stick with that one.
Thank you. Ms. Power.
I think a public policy issue that I have reconsidered, I think onto my advisory days where, you try to walk into the room having background on an issue, but it's also important that you leave yourself open to the possibility of hearing your colleagues and potentially changing your mind about it. And a recent issue that the advisory committee just actually took up this year was a proposal for a plastic bag and a ban in Hingham that some of you may have heard about, as well as a surcharge on paper bags. And my initial thought was, this is a really terrific idea. It's conservation focused. It's going to drive behavior. I'll be the first to admit I leave those permanent bags in my car all the time when I walk into the store. But what became very apparent as we sat down and started looking at it was this very good idea wasn't quite ready for prime time. And our concern was that if it went to town meeting without all the necessary due diligence, it could fail.
Thank you. Ms. Power. Town bylaws require that articles for the annual meeting town warrant be submitted by January 20th. Under what circumstances do you believe the warrant should be reopened?
It's a timely question this year because, as many of you know, there were a lot of circumstances that caused that to happen. In general, my principle would be that the warrant should only be opened if there is new and unexpected business that the meeting can and should take up during that time. For example, 2 years ago, the town was offered the opportunity to purchase a parcel of land at Recreation Park Drive. That doesn't necessarily fit neatly into the January 20th time frame. I think we've had other instances in the past where perhaps work hasn't been completed or work has potentially been withdrawn. I am less inclined to open the warrant for those purposes because I think it runs the risk of jeopardizing our responsibility to town meeting. And as chair of the advisory committee, my responsibility to town meeting is paramount, and as a selectman, I would feel the same way.
Thank you. Ms. Louder.
I basically agree with Mary. This has been a very unusual year. I would say we would open the warrant for real estate deals. We've done that several times over the years that I have been part of the advisory committee and the selectmen. We use that power judiciously. We would open it this year. We opened it to remove and add an article for electronic voting because the information didn't get to all the different committees. So we don't do it willy-nilly at all. It is very well thought out, and we want the warrant articles by January 19th. So it is excruciating to do it. We don't like to do it. So.
Thank you. Next question, Ms. Louder. If elected, what steps would you propose to ensure that citizens are made fully aware of proposals which could significantly affect the town and are afforded ample opportunity to comment and participate in the formulation of the town's position on such proposals?
If I am, or when I am reelected, we'll continue the process of doing very open meetings during the selectmen's meeting, insisting that open meetings be held, and the plastic bag warrant article is a perfect example. When they first came before us, we recommended to them that they have public meetings and they take the time to socialize this. So we'll continue the practice of having as much time as needed for new projects coming before the selectmen and require that open meetings be held before they get to us, hopefully, or after they get to us, we'll send them back. And that we're clear in a selectmen's meeting that you introduce the article or the topic, and then at the end that you try and summarize it so that the people in the audience listening at home or in the room understand what's going on.
Thank you. Ms. Power.
I think the best way to ensure the public is aware of proposals that could have a significant impact as a member of the Board of Selectmen is two things. First and foremost, I think the Board of Selectmen need to schedule timely hearings on warrant articles. It was kind of a shame this year that many important pieces of business were not taken up by the Board of Selectmen until the second week in March, losing a lot of valuable time to have input and to have public discussion. Secondly, I think it's very important, particularly with members of the Board of Selectmen, that warrant articles get full discussion so that the public is aware of not only how the selectmen are voting, but why are they voting as they did. The recent town administrator bylaw is a very good example where there was very little public discussion of the matter. And while the selectmen, as well as the advisory committee, supported it, it seemed to me that it was a missed opportunity to educate and engage the public. That will happen at town meeting, but I think town meeting works best when it happens sooner.
Thank you. Ms. Power, how do you propose that the town balance the need to invest in new services, capital projects, infrastructure, while managing the budget?
Yeah. That's been my life for the last about 60 days. In fact, when the budget came to the advisory committee, it had about a $2.1 million deficit, which was not easy. What we try to do on the advisory committee, and a practice that I would continue, is to try to be fair, fact-based, equitable, and understanding what we're recommending and whether or not it's sustainable. One of the things that I've brought to the advisory committee in my 5 years on the committee is analysis and analytics that helps the advisory committee, and I believe the town, strike all those different balances. We're also guided by our financial policy, which gives us thresholds for capital spending, for budgeting, for debt service. It's a very tricky balance, but one where I think facts and data can best inform everyone.
Thank you. We are now going to move on to the last question. Sorry, Ms. Lauder.
That's okay.
You have to catch me.
Because I agreed with her once doesn't mean I'm going to do it again. I believe in master planning, and my 6 years on capital and my 6 years on advisory, we did a great deal of planning and analytics and analyzing not only today, but 5 years out and 10 years out. We have, I've been advocating for a facilities manager's position so that we can put together a 15-year, 20-year building program so that we can better budget. There is a balance between operating budget and capital, and it is a balancing act. So the more you know about the future plans and the more you have in front of you of what kinds of money you need. And when I was on capital outlay, we were the first to put together the fact that we needed $2 million a year, and this is back a few years now, to meet the bare minimum requirements of capital for this town. So analytics, Mary's right, we've got them, we need more of them.
Thank you. Now we'll have the last question prior to your closing statements. So, Ms. Lauder, this is, what do you believe is the single most important duty of a selectman?
To protect the town and to respond to all the citizens and be available for the citizens. We're policymakers, but we're responsible to every one of you in this room who put us in this seat. We're to protect the town, both budget-wise, our bond rating, and its reputation, and the future of the town. Started in 1635, it's going to be here long after we're all gone. We're just kind of journeying along the way to take care of it and keep it the way we found it and make it better along the way.
Thank you. Ms. Power.
I think the single most important duty of a member of the Board of Selectmen is to set an example for respect for our town government process, for civil discourse, and the kind of behavior we expect from our volunteers, from our employees, and from guests to our room. You know, one of the things I've gotten an appreciation for is that, you know, being a selectman doesn't start at 7 o'clock when the meeting begins and end when the gavel concludes the meeting. It has to do with how you conduct yourself before the meeting, after the meeting, in the supermarket, on the sidelines of fields. And I understand that responsibility, and I understand that my behavior and conduct is measured by not only what I do during the meetings, but as I go about living my life in the town of Hingham. I think that that's a very important example that members of the Board of Selectmen can set, because we are visible in our role and our behavior has the opportunity to be contagious. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on to the closing statements, which, as I said previously, will be done in reverse order of your opening statements. So, Ms. Louder, if you would begin with your closing statement.
Again, thank you all. I am looking and asking for your vote to return me for another 3 years to finish a lot of projects. I grew up in an environment where we were expected to do time, talent, and treasure to everything. I've done that for 3 years for Hingham. I think I've been a good steward of the town and a good representative of the town. I'd like to continue doing that. I'd like to protect the AAA rating and deliver services that all of our residents want and take care of the citizens here in Hingham. So based on my education, my community service, my service in government, I'm asking you to return me for another 3 years, and I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Ms. Power.
Thank you. Thank you again, everybody, this evening. You know, as I've been introducing myself to folks who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting during my many years of service to the town, I've tried to run a campaign and introduce myself in a way that gives you a flavor for how I might govern if I had the privilege of being elected to the Board of Selectmen. Throughout this campaign, I've tried to demonstrate an in-depth knowledge of town affairs, to show how my professional background could enhance the Board of Selectmen. I've tried to demonstrate commitment, a very strong work ethic, and most importantly, the values of integrity and of respect. This is what I've tried to bring to my personal life, my professional life, my volunteer life for the town, and that would be my commitment if I had the honor of being elected. I love this community. This is our home. This is where we intend to live our lives. We hope our children will move back, and I respectfully ask for your vote on May 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We will now be moving on to the school committee, so if the candidates for the school committee would please join us, and Christine will have your name tag as to where you sit. Thank you. Thank you. The same rules apply for the school committee. For the contested race, we will begin with opening statements. Again, this was chosen by lottery earlier. We will then go on to questions. Opening statements, you have 2 minutes. Each question you will have 1 minute. Again, no rebuttals. And your closing statement, you will have 1 minute. The closing statement will be in reverse order of the opening statements. If I get you off track, remind me and jump in. But we will start with the beginning with Mr. De Silva for your opening statement.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for coming tonight. And for you at home watching us, thank you so much. I do ask that you please consider voting for me on May 2nd, and I guarantee you I will not take your vote for granted. My name is Carlos da Silva. I have 2 sons currently attending the Hingham Public Schools. My parents were public servants. My father was a police officer, and my mother was a teacher and a principal of an elementary school. I am a public servant myself. I work for the state of Massachusetts. And I am very proud to be running for this seat, and it would be a great honor to serve on the school committee. I have this past Monday toured the schools, met all the principals, met with Superintendent Gallo, and learned firsthand how the operation is going. And I can tell you that if elected on May 2nd, I will continue in meeting up with the principals, with the teachers, with the community, and with the students. I'm very proud to say that my campaign is run by the community. I have the students holding signs, I have senior citizens holding signs, and middle age holding signs. I'm a good listener, and I believe that I will do very good for this town. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Callahan.
Good evening. Thank you for coming out tonight to listen to us. My name is Aileen Callahan. I have lived here in Hingham since 1988, the year that my husband David and I got married. We have 2 children, who one is a graduate of Hingham High School, one is graduating this year. I have been very involved in the Hingham schools for many years now. This is the first year in 9 years that I am not either the vice president or president of one of the middle school or high school PTOs. Before that, I also was a class parent and worked with the birthday books program at South School Elementary School. In addition to my involvement with the schools, I also currently sit on the Hingham Affordable Housing Trust. I also just finished serving on the Planning Board Accessory Dwelling Unit Study Group. Beyond my involvement with town activities and school activities, I also volunteer with the Talking Information Center. It is an affiliate of WATD in Marshfield. It's actually a radio station for the visually impaired, and every Wednesday morning I read the newspaper on that radio station. I also was the attorney who did all of the volunteer work for the zoning part of the playground when it was built here in Hingham. I'm a 1980 graduate of Duxbury High School. I then graduated from Wellesley College and then Boston College Law School. I've been practicing law here in Hingham for 30 years since I graduated, and I primarily focus on domestic relations and divorce mediation. I think my skills, both those that I've acquired through all my volunteer efforts, but also as an attorney and particularly as a mediator, would be very well suited on the school committee. I look forward to earning your respect and hopefully your vote on May 2nd. Thank you again for listening this evening.
Thank you. Ms. Galco.
Thank you to the League for organizing this event. My name is Cynthia Galco, and I'm running for a seat on the school committee. I've chosen to run for the election this year because as both a parent and a Hingham resident, I'm invested in our schools, and I think that my experiences have given me the skills and the perspective necessary to be a valuable asset to the school committee and the town. I have a degree in management from Bucknell University, and I have worked in both finance and education. My husband Brad and I moved to Hingham in 2001, and we have 3 children currently in the schools in grades 11, 9, and 6. For the past 14 years, I've been involved in many organizations in town, including the Hingham Education Foundation, St. John the Evangelist Church, the Foster East and Middle School PTOs, the Hingham Historical Society, Wilder Memorial Nursery School, and the Hingham Newcomers Club. I've served as either president or member of the executive board on most of those organizations, and I've learned how to work collaboratively with both colleagues and administrators to set goals and achieve them. My experiences have allowed me to understand Hingham education from a variety of perspectives, and also to develop my skills in budgeting, leadership, facility and personnel management, conflict resolution, and strategic thinking. I've also learned to appreciate the many different points of views that Hingham residents have on education in our town. If elected to school committee, I'd like to focus on long-term planning for facilities, school policies and personnel, and the financial impact of each of those. I look forward to learning more about our educational system and how it fits into the overall priorities of the town of Hingham. And I would like to use my skills to support educational excellence in a fiscally responsible way. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Erin Kelly, and I'm running for school committee, as you probably could guess. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters of Hingham for hosting this event. I'd also like to recognize the other candidates here, as well as the citizens in the room, for the service that they have provided to Hingham. I am grateful for that. I think we all agree that Hingham is a fantastic town, and it's top-rated schools, it's dedicated teachers, and it is supported by its caring citizens. I'm running for the school committee because of the successful effort working with the full-day kindergarten group with the current school committee and advisory board. If elected, I will bring a long-range perspective as a parent of young children. I also bring a valuable experience from my 20 years in financial services. My husband Tom and I have both been residents for Hingham's for 10 years. I hope to help round out the current school committee by providing a differentiated perspective of a younger family. I'm a graduate of the University of Vermont with a degree in economics, and a year ago I left a 20-year career in financial services, working for companies such as Thomson Reuters and Fidelity. I've enjoyed that transition home, and I'm excited about the opportunity not to just advocate for my children, but to advocate for the children of Hingham. I plan to leverage my can-do management style and concise communication skills honed in my professional career for the benefit of Hingham Public Schools. Thank you for your time this evening. I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on to the question portion. Again, you will have 1 minute. This was, again, by lottery. And Ms. Kelly, you will start the questioning. We will then move to Mr. De Silva and go that way. And we will alternate for each question. The first question is, The Race to Nowhere is a popular documentary examining today's young students in terms of competitiveness and overscheduling. What policies can the school committee consider to help students manage stresses imposed on them today?
Thank you. I think that, to begin with, I think that primarily is a parental responsibility. I think that being overscheduled is outside of the domain of the school committee. I think that parents need to be able to set appropriate guidelines and appropriate boundaries for how their children are, what their children do in the afternoons and times when they're not within school.
Thank you. Mr. De Silva.
My son Andre was just accepted to UMass, Boston. And is this working? Can you hear me? And one of the things that we said to him is during his first 2 years, we don't want him to work. We want him to focus on academics. And we have asked him to, instead of driving, to commute. So that will reduce some of the stress at the college level. But at the high school level, at local level, what can be done? We have to work with the school administration to see if the tests can be done year in and year out without so many tests, because I believe what's causing all this stress is that the kids are involved with so many tests, and then they are involved with so many sports activities that perhaps by the time they get home, they are tired and they don't feel like doing their homework, and you have to be on top of them as parents so they don't go to school without doing the homework. And obviously, that put a little extra stress on them.
Thank you. Ms. Callahan.
I think that one area that the school committee could be involved in this would be being very careful to monitor what the policies are at the school about grades versus activities. I know that there are policies in place currently about how many classes kids can get D's in before they don't qualify to participate in certain activities. I've always had a concern that that actually was a little bit too lenient. It is academics first, and I think that that's something that perhaps needs to be looked into, that maybe even 1 D, not 2, might be too many to allow you to participate in extracurricular activities. I think there could also potentially be outreach as far as educational programs. There's no reason why the school committee can't also have some impetus on trying to bring in programs to educate parents about the stress that kids are dealing with, because there is a lot of stress. Testing is certainly a problem, but since that's state mandated, the school committee doesn't always have the capacity to control how many tests the kids are taking. It would be nice if we did, but we don't.
Ms. Galco.
I have to say I agree with a lot of what's already been said. The school committee does not have direct impact on what happens day-to-day in any of our schools. The school committee sets policies and obviously needs to work with the school department to make sure that those policies are correct. I do think that overscheduling is a parental issue at heart, but there are lots of different opportunities that we all want our children to take. I have 2 in high school right now that are involved in sports, and they're involved in AP classes, and it's hard, and there's a lot of homework. I do think that being involved in other activities helps sometimes kids manage their time, but on the school committee, I would say that we need to look at the overall policies. We need to encourage any outside speakers, as Aileen said, to come in and educate parents as to the best way to deal with overscheduling.
Thank you. Mr. De Silva, we'll start with you for this next question. The 1993 Massachusetts Education Reform Act called for all children, regardless of where they lived, their family income, the language they spoke, or whether or not they had special learning needs, to have a fair and equal access to quality education. Since that time, Hingham is not alone in imposing fees for activities in the public schools and is piloting a sliding scale tuition to introduce the full-day kindergarten program. What are your thoughts on fees supplementing the offerings by school department compared to the town budget covering all services?
Well, I'm glad that it's about time that we are looking to implement full-day kindergarten in Hingham. And obviously, as it is the first year, most likely it's getting implemented at a fee. I am for anyone attending the public schools for not paying anything whatsoever, because it is a public school after all. And by mandate, public school has to offer, free school to everyone, like you mentioned, regardless of, of background or immigration status. So I'm in full favor, and I have actually proposed that as an answer to the paper that perhaps if there is a way of gradually implementation of not charging kids with special needs first, would be appreciated.
We need to move on. Ms. Callahan.
Obviously, in a perfect world, if we could raise taxes to whatever we wanted to raise them to and have everything be free, that would be wonderful. And philosophically speaking, it is public school. And yes, philosophically speaking, public school should be free. But we don't live in that perfect world where we have that never-ending supply of funds to pay for things. So it was time for full-day kindergarten, and there were so many other activities that are offered at the schools that are on a fee basis. And if the only way to have them be available is based on a fee situation, then I don't think there's anything wrong with that. As far as the full-day kindergarten issue goes, I do think that it's too soon to be making a judgment call as to whether or not it should stay a fee basis or whether it should be paid for, because this is our very first year doing it, and we still need to see how it's going to shake down. I will say that we base ourselves on 20 other communities, and of those communities, 18 have full-day kindergarten, and 13 of them do charge for that kindergarten already.
Thank you. Ms. Galco.
There are definitely activity fees, and obviously we're charging for full-day kindergarten. I think that that's a good thing at the beginning of any program. We need to see how things work out with full-day kindergarten, and then after we've gone through 1 year, maybe 2, who knows, we can determine how it went. We can look at maybe trying to fit it into the budget. I do not think that the full-day kindergarten should be funded by the schools at the expense of something else in the school department budget. And that, as for activity fees after school, while it would be a wonderful thing for all activities to be free, that's just not going to happen. They're very expensive, and I think that again is another decision that families just have to make for themselves if they're willing to pay those fees.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly.
I agree with much of what has been said. I believe that the extra activities and sports fees, the use of revolving accounts in that case, makes a lot of sense. I do think that it's important that those fees, though, have a bit of limits. If there are multiple children that you are putting through, and the expense, to keep in mind that those limits are important. In terms of full-day kindergarten, I very much support full-day kindergarten. I also very much support it being piloted in a tuition base as it is right now. And I support looking for ways to eventually have it be a part of the budget. I also want to say that I'm very proud of this year's school committee for working through to ensure that it can be subsidized, so that tuition basis was never.
Thank you. Ms. Callahan, we'll start with you on our next question. Hingham opted to stay with the MCAS test this year instead of administering the PARCC test. The State Board of Education is due to vote on whether to switch to the PARCC test in the fall. Should the school committee advocate to the State Board our position about why we decided to stay with MCAS or accept what is decided? What are your thoughts on the proposed PARCC test?
Well, first of all, we did make a very conscious decision not to switch to PARCC. And one of the reasons was that is PARCC still isn't actually been voted by the state to be the test. It probably will be, but it hasn't actually happened yet. And in addition to that, there was a conscious decision to let it happen first and see how other towns did with it and how the test played out. I definitely think we should explain to the state why we did that and not just automatically switch to PARCC. But if the state mandates PARCC, I do not advocate civil disobedience on the part of the town of Hingham, and in that we refuse to make that switch.
Thank you. Ms. Galco.
I would agree with the no civil disobedience part of that. The school committee did make the decision to put off moving to PARCC for this current year that we are in, and that was based on a lot of good thinking and determining that we just didn't want to jump into something in the first year. We wanted to see how it went. I believe there were maybe 45% of the other Massachusetts towns decided not to go to PARCC in this first year. One of the good things I think the school committee did this year, however, just in case PARCC comes along mandated next year, is they made sure that all of the schools are equipped with the technological resources necessary for the students to be able to take that test, which will be done online.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly.
I think that PARCC is interesting. I don't want to move forward fast. I don't think that I support what the school committee has done. But when I read about PARCC, I'm intrigued by its use of technology. I'm intrigued by its how it's a cognitive test versus a fact-based test. I think that as our children start to consume information from devices and from computers, I think that's going to alter how our children learn in the future, and I think it's appropriate that we test them in a fashion that they're familiar with.
Thank you. Mr. De Silva.
I appreciate the fact that the school committee, along with the administration, voted not to adhere to the PARCC by continued MCAS. And I believe part of the decision was made too because we realized in Hingham that the test was not quite developed and perhaps that we were not quite ready. I did have an opportunity to talk all the schools, as I mentioned earlier, and at the middle school, they have a state-of-art, technology. They're up to date. So I would feel that perhaps, at the middle school, if we had the same technology in the other schools, that perhaps we could be ready to park. But we have to understand one thing. The 18th year of MCAS is coming to an end, and eventually they will have to adopt another test setting. And perhaps this park is coming along, and there's plans to move out of MCAS. Thank you.
Thank you. This will be our last question prior to your closing statements. We will start this question with Ms. Galco. Will you, if elected, favor setting kindergarten fees that are calculated on the same basis as the current per pupil cost for students in our school system, thus allocating to the kindergarten program its proportionate share of overhead and other non-direct instructional costs?
Are we assuming that this is a fee-based,
No assumptions, that's just the question.
Okay. I would think if the kindergarten students are in the building, then yes, they should be included in the overall, allocation of costs. Kindergarten is not currently mandated by the state of Massachusetts. If it goes to being a fully funded by the public schools class, then we will be able to do just a full-day program. If, however, we leave it as a tuition-based program, we cannot mandate that children go for the full day, so there are going to be some options for families that only go half a day. I'm not sure how we would deal with that situation if there were not very many of those families.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly.
I don't know if this is appropriate, but can you re-ask the question?
I can re-ask the question.
Okay, thank you.
Will you, if elected, favor setting kindergarten fees that are calculated on the same basis as the current per pupil cost for students in our school system, thus allocating to the kindergarten program its proportionate share of overhead and other non-direct instructional costs?
Yes, but not yet. If I'm understanding the question correctly, it essentially is asking, do I fully want the town to pay for full-day kindergarten? And if that's what I'm to understand, I think we've covered that, in that I think that we want to test it. We want to have it be tuition-based, and we want to understand the curriculum. We want to get things rolling. If I'm misunderstanding the question, I apologize.
Thank you. Mr. De Silva.
I follow suit. It is a tough question, but let's put it this way. I think I answered that already. I'm in full favor that anyone attending public schools should not pay any fees. I'm just not in favor of any fees being, obviously it's the first year, so it's a test, so we have to go through that test. But in the future, I would be in favor of somehow applying the cost of full-day kindergarten as part of the full budget.
Thank you. Ms. Callahan.
It's a very difficult question. I think we're all struggling with it. I'm understanding it slightly differently. I feel like it's asking if the kindergarten fee should be based on what the kindergartners really would be charged if they were part of the whole school system. And my answer then is I can't answer that, because I would need to know what that number is. Because if it turns out that means it costs $7,000 a year to go to kindergarten, then I might have a really big problem with that, and my response would be no, that shouldn't be what the fee is based on. So I actually would need a lot more information to further answer that question.
Thank you. So now we will move on to closing statements, which will be in the reverse order of your opening statements. You have 1 minute for your closing statement, and we will start here with Ms. Kelly.
Great. Thank you very much to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. Over the past few weeks, I have learned a tremendous amount. Concerns and priorities that voters have. Some of those priorities are complementary, some of those priorities are oppositional. And I will just say that through my career, I have learned to keep an open mind. and to listen to seek consensus. I intend to leverage this skill in addition to my concise communication style within Hingham. Thank you, and I ask for your vote on May 2nd.
Thank you. Ms. Galco.
Thank you again to the League for organizing this event and to all of you for coming out on what was a beautiful night, I'm sure still is. Again, I've chosen to run for election this year because I am invested in the public schools, and I think I've shown that through my experiences along the way. I hope to always be invested in the Hingham Public Schools because we plan to live here, and hopefully our children will come back and live here and raise their children. Again, if elected to the school committee, I'd like to focus on long-term planning. I think we need to put some work into looking ahead and seeing what's coming down the pike, both with physical plant and personnel needs, do some background work on all of that so that when those changes happen, we're ready for them to happen. So I ask for your support and your vote on May 2nd.
Thank you. Ms. Callahan.
Again, thank you for coming out tonight. I hope that this discussion has helped me earn your confidence and also potentially earn one of your 2 votes on May 2nd for school committee. I also wanted to point out that this is the last year I will have someone in the Hingham Public Schools. But I counterbalance that by saying I have been very involved in the school system for well over a decade. I think that combination would bring a unique perspective to the school committee, and I would be in the minority of school committee members who have no children in the Hingham school system. So I think I would really bring a special perspective, and I think that my background definitely lends to a lot of different expertise and experience that would be very useful on the school committee. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. De Silva.
Once again, thank you so much for organizing this forum. It's a great opportunity to allow us to speak to the voters. Again, I would appreciate if you could please consider voting for me on May 2nd. If you want to know more about me, go to my website, carlosforhingham.com. I'm very proud of all the things that I have accomplished in such a little time that I have been in Hingham. I moved to Hingham in 2007, got involved with the community right away. Currently, I am actually on the board of directors of the Hingham Youth Soccer and also serving as field coordinators. I was an assistant coach, and I have a BA in leadership and administration from the National Labor College, an associate's degree I earned right here at the Quincy College on labor management relations. So I believe, before I moved here, I served on the PTO and Citywide Parents Council. A school committee for me is a continuation of the PTOs and Citywide. So I would appreciate your vote on May 2nd. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
I would now like to take the opportunity to close the forum. First thing I would like to do is thank the League of Women Voters of Hingham. It's always a pleasure coming back to Hingham. Christine and I connect early in the year. This year it happened to be in the midst of the lovely snow, so we had nothing else to do. And I would like to thank the timekeepers, who are the unsung heroes in my opinion, because without them we never keep on time. So thank you for keeping us on task and on time. I also want to thank all of the candidates who joined us this evening for taking part in the democratic process, and for the League of Women Voters, again, for sponsoring this event. For those who are here and those who are at home, please remember to vote on May 2nd. The polls are open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Please encourage your friends and neighbors to vote. If your friends and neighbors were unable to watch this evening, this will be rebroadcast on HCAM up until the election. You can check the local cable listings to find out when it will be rebroadcast. So if they have questions about it because they couldn't watch tonight, encourage them to watch it, encourage them to get up to speed with the issues and what the candidates are saying here. If you are going to be out of town, contact the town clerk's office, obtain an absentee ballot, encourage your children who may be away at college, get an absentee ballot. They are still part of the voting community. They can also do that. Bring a friend to the polls when you go. As the League of Women Voters has said, and it was said earlier this evening, democracy is not a spectator sport, so please vote. And thank you very much. I appreciate being here every year.